Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. Today I'll talk about 4 U.S. presidents: James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, and Martin Van Buren. James Monroe was the 5th U.S. president. He served 2 4-year terms from 1817 to 1825. Born in Westmoreland County, Virginia in 1758, Monroe attended the College of William and Mary, fought with distinction in the Continental Army, and practiced law in Fredericksburg, Virginia. His ambition and energy, together with the backing of President Madison, made him the Republican choice for the presidency in 1816. With little Federalist opposition, he easily won re-election in 1820. Monroe made unusually strong cabinet choices, naming a Southerner, John C. Calhoun, as Secretary of War, and a Northerner, John Quincy Adams, as Secretary of State. Only Henry Clay's refusal kept Monroe from adding an outstanding Westerner. In foreign affairs, Monroe proclaimed the fundamental policy that bears his name, responding to the threat that the more conservative governments in Europe might try to aid Spain in winning back her former Latin American colonies. Monroe didn't begin to formally recognize the young sister republics until 1822, after ascertaining that Congress would vote appropriations for diplomatic missions. He and Secretary of State John Quincy Adams wished to avoid trouble with Spain until they had ceded the Floridas, as was done in 1821. Great Britain, with its powerful navy, also opposed reconquest of Latin America and suggested that the United States join in proclaiming hands off. Not only must Latin America be left alone, he warned, but also Russia must not encroach southward on the Pacific coast. The American continents, he stated, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintained, are henceforth not to be considered subjects for future colonization by any European power. Some 20 years after Monroe died in 1831, this became known as the Monroe Doctrine. He was married to Elizabeth Courtwright Monroe. John Quincy Adams was the 6th U.S. president. He served from 1825 to 1829. He was the first president who was the son of a president. Born in Braintree, Massachusetts in 1767, he watched the Battle of Bunker Hill from the top of Pence Hill above the family farm. As secretary to his father in Europe, he became an accomplished linguist and assiduous diarist. Serving under President Monroe, Adams was one of America's great secretaries of state, arranging with England for the joint occupation of the Oregon Country, obtaining from Spain the cession of the Floridas, and formulating with the President the Monroe Doctrine. Adams urged the United States to take a lead in the development of the arts and sciences through the establishment of a national university, the financing of scientific expedition, and the erection of an observatory. His critics declared such measures transcended constitutional limitations. In 1848, he collapsed on the floor of the House from a stroke and was carried to the Speaker's room, where 2 days later he died. He was buried, as were his father, mother, and wife, at First Parish Church in Quincy. To the end, Old Man Eloquent, as he was called, had fought for what he considered right. Andrew Jackson was the 7th U.S. president. He served 2 4-year terms from 1829 to 1837. Born in a backwoods settlement in the Carolinas in 1767, he received sporadic education. But in his late teens, he read law for about 2 years, and he became an outstanding young lawyer in Tennessee. Fiercely jealous of his honor, he engaged in brawls, and in a duel, killed a man who cast an unjustified slur on his wife Rachel. A major general in the War of 1812, Jackson became a national hero when he defeated the British at New Orleans. In 1824, some state political factions rallied around Jackson. By 1828, enough had joined Old Hickory, as he was called, to win numerous state elections and control of the federal administration in Washington. In January of 1832, while the president was dining with friends at the White House, someone whispered to him that the Senate had rejected the nomination of Martin Van Buren as minister to England. Jackson jumped to his feet and exclaimed, "By the Eternal, I'll smash them." So he did. His favorite Van Buren became vice president and succeeded to the presidency when Old Hickory retired to the Hermitage, where he died in June 1845. Rachel Donaldson Jackson was his wife. Martin Van Buren was the 8th U.S. president. He served from 1837 to 1841. Of Dutch descent, he was born in 1782, the son of a tavern keeper and farmer in Kinderhook, New York. By 1827, he had emerged as the principal Northern leader for Andrew Jackson. President Jackson rewarded Van Buren by appointing him Secretary of State. The Little Magician, as he was called, was elected vice president on the Jacksonian ticket in 1832 and won the presidency in 1836. Van Buren devoted his inaugural address to a discourse upon the American experiment as an example to the rest of the world. The country was prosperous, but less than 3 months later, the Panic of 1837 punctured the prosperity. Basically, the trouble was the 19th century cyclical economy of boom and bust, which was following its regular pattern, but Jackson's financial measures contributed to the crash. His destruction of the Second Bank of the United States had removed restrictions upon the inflationary practices of some state banks, while speculation in lands based on easy bank credit had swept the West. To end his speculation, Jackson in 1836 had issued a specie circular requiring that lands be purchased with hard money, gold or silver. Inclined more and more to oppose the expansion of slavery, Van Buren blocked the annexation of Texas because it assuredly would add to slave territory, and it might bring war with Mexico. Defeated by the Whigs in 1840 for re-election, he was an unsuccessful candidate for president on the Free Soil ticket in 1848. He died in 1862. Hannah Hose Van Buren was his spouse. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode. Prezi signing out. Bye.